What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Week 9 edition of the Underdog Drafter Party. I'm Jake Tribbey, here as always with my co-host, one of the best football writers around, Ryan Heath. We also have our first ever guest this week. It's Pat, aka Fantasy Dog Pound. Fantasy Dog Pound is one of the best Battle Royale and Best Ball YouTube channels that I have stumbled across. Pat is also involved with BestBallOverlay.com's tools, which we will show off on stream, on top of being a highly successful Battle Royale drafter. I really couldn't think of a better guest. Tonight we'll be drafting some Battle Royale teams, talking about our favorite scroll down options, discussing contest specific strategy. We can also answer any pressing questions you guys have about the Week 9 slate, whether it's season long, DFS, what have you. With that out of the way, Pat, Ryan, how you guys doing?
Doing great.
Good,
Pat, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate you boys having me. And what an S tier open right there. Was that a cold open?
No, I have that written out. I hate to destroy the wonderful allure of my fantastic intros there, but yeah, that's pretty much the only prep that I do for this show beyond drafting and grinding the rankings and the projections.
It doesn't make it any less god tier. So
really
appreciate you guys having me on. Looking forward to making some strong teams with you boys.
Yeah, this should be a lot of fun. This is, like I said, our first show with a guest, and really glad it's someone who I highly respect in the Battle Royale Best Ball community. We'll start by going position by position like we always do here. Starting with quarterback, I pretty clearly prefer Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson to Josh Allen this week. I just think Josh Allen's being a bit overdrafted. Beyond that, I think there are some intriguing scroll down options. Ryan, who do you like a quarterback this week? What do you like at the top? What do you like when you scroll down?
So of like the top 6 guys, I probably have the most interest in Jaden Daniels. Kind of the reason for that is the Giants get a lot of pressure. Daniels' scramble rate goes up to like 30% whenever he's pressured. So I think this could be like some Jaden Daniels hero ball type of stuff. So he's the one I'm most interested in. I mean, Josh Allen's overdrafted every single week. Like that's just kind of what happens in BR. I am a little bit interested. I mean, the Dolphins have been very blitz heavy over the past 2 weeks against Anthony Richardson, against Kyler Murray, and Allen has destroyed the blitz over his career. Averages like 9 yards per attempt against it. So I do think there's some intrigue there. If Allen's falling, I'm trying to take him. Can stack him with a Keon Coleman, whose red zone role is incredible. Aside from that, I do think it's a pretty good week to scroll down at the quarterback position. Jordan Love, I feel very confident is playing. I guess maybe the market doesn't feel that confident about it. But this is just an incredible spot for him. It's an incredible on paper matchup for Jaden Reed. The Lions giving up so much to the slot. So the Jordan Love, Jaden Reed stuff, I'm going to be all over this week as well.
Yeah, I think I also have, maybe a bit of interest in Bo Nix because his rushing floor is so great. Only if I get sniped on my preferred stack is just sort of like a late round desperation dart throw kind of play. Kyler Murray is a little bit interesting this week as well. The on paper matchup is really tough. I know Ryan had some favorable schematic notes there. Beyond that, I mean, I'm always a little interested in Jameis Winston. It's a bit thinner for like 6-person drafts. I think at 12-person drafts, I'm really excited about Jameis Winston. I think this Cleveland Chargers game could be a bit of a sneaky shootout spot. Pat, anything to add on the quarterback position this week?
Yeah, I actually think it's a little more polarizing now that we have injuries to T. Higgins, we have injuries to DK, so kind of crossing out Geno for me. I am drafting less Burrow. It's a little less appetizing. I like the Love shout, especially because he's a scroll. He's outside the top 6, so you are going to have less people drafting him. Tua's down there. Tua. Now, do you think this game's do you think it has a high potential to flop? Is that why you're off of Josh Allen?
The matchup here is really, really tough. The Bills funnel underneath pretty hard. A lot of production to tight ends, a lot of production to running backs. My favorite play in that game by far is Devon Achane, who is, the wide receiver 8. If you just look at his games with Tua Tagovailoa, despite the fact that he's a running back and is also looking at 10 carries this week. So yeah, I'm really not particularly excited about Tua this week, but given the playmakers that he has, I think you could always justify a Tua Tyreek Hill team just on the basis of Tyreek Hill's, one of the few guys in the NFL who could house, 2 screens for 80-yard touchdowns, and then you're really cooking there. All right, guys, moving on to running back here. Running back slate, I think, is pretty flat at the top. I think Kamara, Saquon, Kyren Williams, Derrick Henry are all pretty great plays. And I think you could argue that any of these guys could justifiably be the 101 this week, especially just at the running back position. Pat, I'm curious how you're seeing the running back position this week and if there are any scroll down options that appeal to you.
I'm sure we'll get into it, but receiver, I feel like I need to leave the draft with one of Lamb, Chase, Brown, or Hill. I think there's a pretty big fall off after those 4. But running back, I'm mixing in all of these guys. I think we do have some interesting scrolls opening up today with the Zach Moss doubtful and Chase Brown being drafted, like 5% before today. I did jump into a couple main slates on stream, and Chase Brown went in both drafts. So it's an interesting note there, but looks like he'll end up around 50% drafted.
Yeah, I think Chase Brown is a great note. He's projecting really, really well for us. If I just sort by underdog points, he's actually ahead of Saquon Barkley right now for us. I think we probably will end up coming down slightly, but I mean, I've seen really strong Chase Brown projections across the industry. So, I mean, Travion Williams is the RB3 here. He has not played a single offensive snap all season. The RB4 is Chris Evans, who's on IR. I mean, 85% snap share for Chase Brown looks pretty reasonable here. Ryan, anything to add on Chase Brown, these running backs this week?
Not really. Yeah. I mean, Chase Brown, incredible play. Tracy, I also have a lot of interest in. That's just the Commanders have been pretty vulnerable to opposing rushers. So, and he just kind of took over that backfield last weekend, as far as I'm concerned, with what he did. I guess just like up at the top, my biggest takes are that Kamara and Kyren Williams might just be my 101 and 102. In a vacuum, at least, this wide receiver slate's a little bit hard to take a stance like that, with how the position thins out. But yeah, I just think those two are incredibly strong plays. And I did want to call out as well that it does flatten out after that. Somebody like a James Conner, who I believe is way down in the 30s in ADP, he projects in our stuff exactly the same as a Ken Walker, for example. So I do think after that top tier at running back, I'm just kind of waiting and vacuuming up the Connors, the Chase Browns, and what have you.
And the deeper the contest too, right? If you're sacrificing, or maybe not even sacrificing any in projection, if you can get someone that is drafted 10% of the time versus 100% of the time, like Kenneth Walker, that just give me all of the guy that is being drafted just 10% of the time. Because when you're right, if you're overfield on that player, you're just going to increase your chances of winning by so much more. And that is very important in these deep field tournaments where there's 60,000 entrants.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. I mean, people are sleeping on this workload for James Conner. 92% of backfield XFP over the last 2 weeks. Only 2 players this season are over 80% for the full year. I believe he's only lost 3 backfield opportunities over the last 2 games. Just a fantastic workload for Conner. We'll move on to wide receiver here. I'm right there with you, Pat. I think there's a very clear top 4 between Lamb, Chase, AJ Brown, and Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill maybe is in a bit of his own tier because, again, the matchup isn't great. Buffalo isn't giving up much deep here, but, he's such a big play threat. You can obviously always justify it. Pat, I am curious, beyond those 4, who do you like, and what should we do with Puka Nacua this week? He's a guy that I've moved down my own rankings pretty heavily, but it's just a really tricky spot right now.
Yeah. The fact that it's the same knee that kept him out of the games
that's brutal.
Has everyone worried? I think the thing we should be doing right now is pushing up Cooper Kupp, and he's not getting that big boost in the lobbies right now. I think that's a pretty easy leverage spot. I did like Puka before the injury news. I know he's someone you drafted on the cage match.
I'm really hoping he sits, man, because I can sub. I can get up to Cooper Kupp, but if he plays like a 40% route share, I'm so cooked. I'm going to be 1-8 in the cage match.
But people are afraid, and we did. In an interesting note is, I think you should be worried that he's active, is because the week that they had. Demarcus Robinson, or I forget the receiver, but McVay said, yeah, he's healthy, he's going to play, and he played 3 snaps. So we could see a decoy Puka this week.
Yeah, it could definitely be a limited role, which is why I just don't think I can touch him right now. I am very excited to draft Cooper Kupp. Even in the 6 quarters they've played together, Kupp has out targeted Puka. I believe it's 17-3. So still, or 17-13, I should say. So still, solid volume for Kupp relative, to all the other wide receivers available in that range. Graham Barfield on Cashing Points kind of described him as like a mini CeeDee Lamb this week, and I think that's a fairly sharp take. The target volume should definitely be there. Ryan, beyond sort of those top tier options, anyone else you like here when you scroll down or in these middle rounds?
Yeah, I guess I just want to add kind of on the Kupp discussion that DK Metcalf being out of this game kind of kills some of my interest just in the game environment. So that going back to where I was very big on Kyron, that's kind of where that take is also supported from, is that I just don't know that the Seahawks can hang in this at all. But yeah, anyway, as far as wide receivers go, Chris Olave pops as a really big value relative to ADP in our stuff. Has an incredible both on paper and schematic matchup with all of the single high that the Panthers like to play. So he's like a pretty attractive, just kind of one-off to me. Obviously, you can quibble with will the Panthers push the Saints? But I mean, there's downsides to every play. Aside from that, kind of if we're scrolling down at the wide receiver position, there are a decent number of options here that get me pretty excited. I already talked about Jayden Reed. On unpressured dropbacks, Reed's targets per route run actually triples over the course of his career. The Lions, obviously, without Aiden Hutchinson, have not gotten that much pressure this year. So that's a spot I'm really, really targeting. Lad McConkey, I have talked verbatim. That's not even the correct word. Ad nauseum, I guess, is the correct word there.
There we go.
Over and over again. We'll put it in normal words. That's what we do on the drafted party. Gotta bring it back to normal words.
Yeah, we drink too many beers to say fancy words on this show.
Yeah, exactly. Lad McConkey has absolutely shredded man coverage this season. The Browns play a ton of man. He ranks second behind only Justin Jefferson in yards per route run against man coverage. He's also weirdly really good against pressure. He's got like a 50% first read target share when Herbert's pressured. So he's a play I have a ton of conviction in this week as well. I guess those are the biggest guys I wanted to call out.
Yeah, I think that roughly sums up the scroll down options that I'm interested in. I mean, McConkey and Reed's ADP should both be notably higher than what it is. My one concern with Reed is that he did log his lowest route share of the season last week. The volume just has never quite been there, but everything about the matchup is pointing to it being a great spot. Pat, any other scroll downs that you like here before we move on to tight end?
Yeah, it's actually someone you have queued up in your rankings. It's BTJ. Everyone wants to do the bring back with Evan Ingram, but I think the sneaky bring back could be BTJ if he ends up playing. It's going to be a game time decision. He's a last round pick, so you can pick swap off him, but he's someone that I have around 16% of. So I'm almost at field, and I would rather play it through BTJ. I think they'd be playing from behind. I think Evan Ingram's a good option, but he's being drafted 100% of the time.
Yeah, I really like that call, especially with these 6-round picks. I mean, I'm very willing to eat these Q tags because, you just get a pick swap if your guy does not end up playing. Also wanted to shout out Jacoby Myers here. 33% first read target share in his games without Devontae Adams. That actually bests Brock Bowers. Ryan, I think you also had some positive schematic notes for Myers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, his targets per out run, I think, nearly doubles against single high over since the start of last season. So yeah, I like him as well.
Yeah, Bengals have had a fairly consistent lean toward single high this season. Let's take a peek at tight end, and then we can hop into some drafts here. Before I cover tight end, some of you guys might be wondering why my Underdog screen looks a bit different than the default screen. That's because of the great tools available at bestballoverlay.com. We have Pat on. So Pat, why don't you tell the people a little bit about bestballoverlay.com and what's going on there?
Yeah, pretty crazy. We dropped this about just less than a year ago, maybe like 8 months. But the BR tool is the best thing you can be subscribed to right now. D-Rap won 3 Dog Bowl tickets in 6 weeks, which is I'm not saying that's going to happen, but Pretty ridiculous. Last year's Dog Bowl winner just signed up as well. It's been a really helpful tool for me as a drafter. I front paged multiple times this year on limited volume. It's giving you the game scripts, right? So like if you even want to pull up the Rams and the Seahawks, you said like maybe that game fails because DK's out. It's a 1 point game total. Those close game totals, you can sort of tell a story of with that knowledge that like, oh wow, the run's probably going to be in play all game if Vegas is correct. And I'm not as smart as Vegas, so I tend to trust them more than myself. So it helps you with these game scripts where like in the fourth quarter, it's saying, hey, this team's leading. Maybe they're going to be running out the ball, running out the clock with the running backs. It can just sort of help you in that way. And then the combination tool, which helps you just sort of identify where your weak points are. And an update to the Underdog UI happened yesterday for the first time in a year and a half. So that's going to be coming an update to 1.3 on the website in the next 2 days. But the combination tool, as you guys know, as well, is just extremely helpful.
Yeah. It's been a super helpful tool to me while I draft. I generally prefer to get more drafts in. So I like drafting, maybe 50, 60 teams for the Wildcat. And when you're doing that, you want to make sure you don't consistently end up on the exact same pairings of players, especially given the nature of these drafts. It can be pretty easy to just click the same names on certain builds over and over again. So the combinatorial tool is super, super helpful.
And the best point with that is a position like QB, a position like tight end, you don't want to be falling into these ADP patterns where you're drafting 50% Jake Ferguson with this certain combination that might not even be game stacked. There might be zero correlation. You can fall into this ADP just bad pattern. It's a negative drafting pattern, and you don't even know it. So being able to identify that's really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you guys can save $10 a month on this tool using promo code PARTY. Again, that's promo code PARTY for $10 off a month. Love this tool, something I use while I draft. Find it very, very helpful, and always love promoting stuff that, I use myself, and, just think it's awesome. I think the team behind the tool is great. Pat's one of those guys, and always happy to promote good work within the industry. But tight end, Brock Bowers, I think, is a solid pick. Overall, my favorite pick sort of in this top end of tight ends would probably be Evan Ingram, but I also don't want to take any, massive stands. I've only done about, maybe 15 drafts. So that's probably why my Brock Bowers exposure looks so massive right now. But, I'll be getting most of my action in either tonight, tomorrow, Sunday morning. Pat, how are you seeing the tight end position this week? Any scroll downs that appeal to you?
Tight end's tough this week. I do want to have a pretty decent balance and maybe let my quarterback sort of tell the story for my team and whether I'm correlating or not, or maybe bringbacks. But Taysom Hill as a scroll, I think is very interesting. If we have the news that Love's playing, I'd like Kraft a little more. Ertz with Jaden Daniels. Like I think playing into sort of that correlation helps identify where your spots are here. But Mark Andrews, 3 games in a row, touchdowns in the red zone, and he's outside the top 6. And I tend to go that way if I don't have a strong lean at the end of the drafts.
Yeah, I think the Taysom Hill scroll down is really interesting. Right now, we have him projected for about 7.5 carries, 2 receptions. How often do you have a tight end outside of the top 6 who's looking at 10 touches? I mean, it's pretty rare. Those touches could be in the red zone too. I mean, multi-touchdown upside is definitely there with Taysom Hill, and he's just not being selected very much. Also love him as a DFS play this week at just 3,800.
He's the most annoying player to have on a slate because you have to mix him in as a tight end. And no Kendra, no Jamal Williams.
Yep.
It just makes too much sense. I'm going to be around field 16% on Taysom this week.
Yeah, when you look at the Saints backfield, I mean, it's Alvin Kamara, and then the RB2 this week it's going to be Taysom Hill. I mean, it's a pretty great workload for a guy who's listed at tight end. Ryan, anything to add on the tight end position?
Yeah, Taysom is kind of the only scroll down that really interests me this week. But I will say, especially in our projections, tight ends 2 through 6 are extremely, extremely flat. So yeah, I would just kind of tend to go, as Pat suggested, with what works correlation wise for my build. I had positive schematic notes on almost all of these guys on Evan Ingram. McBride and Pitts have both been great against single high. And Njoku and Ferguson are getting zone heavy matchups. Like these are all spots where I can see any of these guys kind of succeeding. So yeah, I don't want to take any huge stands at the position this week.
Yeah, Bowers is popping a bit in our rankings, if only because, as Ryan noted, tight ends 2 through 6 are so flat. So Bowers being projected for about a point and a half more does help him separate from the pack there a little bit. But yeah, I think I'm with Ryan and Pat. Outside of correlation and grabbing some Taysom Hill here and there. I'm just kind of mixing and matching these top 6 guys. But all right, let's look at some of these contests, and then we can get into some drafts here. Main Battle Royale, they did reduce the prize pool slightly. I've said this all year. I generally prefer the payout structure of the Wildcat. It doesn't pay quite as high of a percentage of entrance as the main Battle Royale. Main Battle Royale is closer to 20%. Wildcat's at 10%. But in exchange for that, you do get a much better payout structure within the top 10%. So that's generally why I'm drafting a lot more Wildcat teams than I am Battle Royale teams. If you've listened to the show at all, you've also heard me sort of lament the rake of the Dog Bowl. It's the highest of any contest on the site. That said, Pat, I know you're a big Dog Bowl guy, so why don't you sell our viewers on the Dog Bowl a little bit here?
I have to do it for advertisement purposes, and obviously I have a following that loves this contest as well. I went with my buddy Nick. He goes by NF42 on Underdog to last year's Dog Bowl contest. We did a pick swap, and we got there the week that Donta Foreman scored 3 tutties. So he was our pick swap last year.
Wow.
that got us there. And just an incredible contest. You get to meet everyone. It's more than just the payouts, like the experience, getting 2 days, 3 days away, paid event the night before drafting, food, drinks, and then the day of watching with everyone, food, drinks again. Is just the experience it's awesome.
Yeah, I think the social experience is, a massive value there with the Dog Bowl. I know I'm thankfully friends with, some very good DFS players, and they've always told me live finals are a ton of fun. Regardless of how they end up breaking, it's always great to meet other people in the industry, the people that we compete with on a weekly basis, enjoy some good food, some drinks, watch, and the setup's always great at these type of live finals. They always have a great setup with all the games and everything. So really like that.
But it's a few other, like it's extremely punishing to try to finish in the top 3 in a contest that is 5,200 people. Like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It is extremely tough to make it into the Dog Bowl. But that being said, even just having 1 sweat or 2 sweats, can still be fun.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we might just draft a Dog Bowl team tonight, considering we haven't done one all year. No better person to do it with than Pat. I always love these smaller field contests. Pat, something I've been harping on all year is that in these smaller field contests, you can really jack up your correlation because you just don't need to get everything right. If you can just nail one team scoring a bunch of points, you're in a great position in like the fullback dive, the flea flicker, the bomb, all great spots. Do you have anything to add in terms of contest specific strategy for some of the smaller field stuff?
Bingo. The fullback dive, $25 5 entry max, especially if you're not someone that max enters other contests. This is the perfect contest for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't have to get everything right. This is something that's relatively easy to front page, top 10. And I think you hit the nail on the head. This is also another contest where like people aren't going to scroll as much. People are going to be a little more tied to ADP. So if you can find that player that's outside the top 36, someone like Chase Brown that projects pretty well inside top 36 this week, someone like that is someone that I'm going to want to draft in this contest specifically.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. I mean, we see that in DFS too, and like single entry 3-max stuff. The top values just naturally come up in ownership, and it's not always correct. I mean, it's more advantageous, I think, to either scroll down, play these lesser owned plays in these smaller field contests. You can just get a significant ownership edge there. I think we've talked for long enough, so why don't we start things off with a Wildcat draft here? And guys, feel free if you have any questions on the Week 9 slate, whether it's DFS, season long, Battle Royale, what have you. We're always happy to answer those, considering there can, generally be some time while we wait for contests to fill up or in between picks, what have you. Pat, as our guest, do you have any like stack that you want us to target for this first draft, or should we just kind of let the draft come to us, see what happens here?
I always just let the draft come to me. Like I'll go into a draft even with the plan, and it'll just completely get blown up because that'll be the draft where Kyron falls 5 spots. And it's like, all right, well, plan out the window. And you want to let the draft come to you every single time, in my opinion.
Yeah, there are, I think I will go out of my way for certain scroll down stacks. generally, but even so, like in the first 3 rounds, I am just letting, the best picks fall to me here. Ryan, do you have any stacks you want us to target early on as we hop into some of these early drafts?
I do think this is kind of like a let it come to you type of week.
Yeah.
I am usually a player that will lean more into, okay, now I'm going to draft like I'm going to draft like my 10 Joe Burrow stacks now. Like that's kind of how I work. But I do think this week, just because I'd say it's like a relatively deeper week at the top. There are a lot more higher projected guys than in some of these weeks recently, where it's been more like there's 9 guys and then ADP's out the window. So yeah, I think this week especially, it's good to let it come to you and be flexible. And yeah, there are always kind of low owned scroll down mini stacks that I like this week too, with like the Love Reed or the Kyler Harris and stuff. So pretty easy to just not even worry about it until the end of a draft.
I'm with you. I think the obvious pick here is just Alvin Kamara. I mean, he projects so well. I do think you can avoid sort of letting the draft come to you if you're drafting like Saturday night late when there's a lot of late breaking injury news. I was getting very, very aggressive on taking Jaden Daniels in drafts on Saturday night once we found out he was playing, because he wasn't a guy anyone was taking. And it didn't quite work out, but it almost did. We almost got the ceiling game from Jaden Daniels there. I mean, it was, God, what a weird game against the Bears there. Running back, I feel like I'm generally avoiding, 2 top options in the same draft, if only because there are scroll downs that I really like here. So probably wide receiver for my next pick. What do you think, Pat? Yeah, I think clearly now.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
If you want to get really weird and deviate from ADP, you can go like Cooper Kupp here and build out your team, and you're just getting away from the standard of picking the next best available. But Tyreek Hill for me is tough to get away from just because of his ceiling.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Totally good with a Tyreek Hill team. Right here.
Kamara did start as the 101 on Monday, so he has been falling. I did expect those receivers to pass them. I think Nocturne, he is a pounder. AJ Brown at 3, if you're not completely overexposed to him at like 40%, I think it's pretty sharp to bring him up just because of how deep RB is versus receiver.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good call. Couple questions in the chat. Someone asked, what do I do if Pollard and Brian Robinson are both active? The injuries scare me. I mean, Pollard in this game environment, like I'm not very excited about. I think I'd be a lot more interested in Brian Robinson. I don't necessarily think I'd sub Waddle. I mean, Pollard is going to play every snap. It's just, I have serious doubts the offense is going to be able to move the ball. It's been a little bit better with Mason Rudolph. Ryan, do you have a take here? I imagine I'm probably going to go in the draft, at least probably Kupp with my next pick.
Yeah, that works for me. And yeah, I think I'm pretty clearly on Brian Robinson there. Yeah, this is just this is like the nightmare game environment. We were talking on our projections call earlier today, Jake, that it feels like the total could be like 32 and I wouldn't even blink at it. I think it's at 38 right now, but oh my God.
I think the lowest total we got was like week 2 or week 3 when the Chargers played the Deshaun Watson Browns. I believe that was sitting at 35 and a half. I mean, this feels just as gross to me. All right, before we get to a couple more questions here, right now we're rocking with Kamara, Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp. Need to start figuring out what we're going to do with our stack here. I think with a team like this, I particularly like a guy like Lamar Jackson because we don't need to force a stack. We could grab Mark Andrews. Pat, do you have any thoughts on that? Oh, and he's gone.
I like K-Walk as the bring back for Cooper Kupp, especially with that close game script, 1 point difference there in the spread. Still pretty high scoring. Are you guys surprised by the 52-point total in Dallas Atlanta? And would that make you want to bring in more Kirk teams, more Dak teams?
Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about a lot. One of the polls that I had for caching points was that both Dak and Kirk Cousins average right around 23 DraftKings fantasy points per game over their last 3 or 4 seasons in these high total games. So this is a really great spot overall for them. I have a harder time piecing these stacks together. I think it's a bit easier from the Dallas side, just going, Dak, CD, and then you can, run it back with a London, a Mooney, Bijan, Kyle Pitts. That feels a bit better to me than the Cousins stacks, where I'm just a little bit worried things could be really spread out here, and that could certainly nuke a lot of Cousins stacks. Ryan, what are your thoughts on that?
I think Bijan is my favorite play in this game. There's a lot of just like weird schematic stuff that I don't totally love. Like Dak and CD have just not been very good against zone heavy teams this year. So I just worry about the ceiling a little bit. I do think this could be like an insanely massive Bijan game. Like the Cowboys are one of the biggest run funnels in the league. Teams have been running the ball on them like crazy. But I mean, then again, if that kind of goes how I just laid it out, where the Cowboys aren't entirely competitive on offense and it's a big Bijan game, then we've been talking about all week, Jake, how Bijan in these positive game scripts just gets yanked for Tyler Algier very quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a really tricky game for me. There's no like, I don't think I want to have huge exposure to it. I'm okay being wrong on that one, I think, though.
Yeah, I said on Cashing Points, my favorite way to play the game was with like a Bijan CD sort of mini stack and then going elsewhere for like a broader game stack. Diving back into this team, though, I think I like making this a Stafford team. We already have the Walker Cooper Kupp correlation. We can roughly assume things are going to be pretty condensed around Kupp, and the total here is really high.
If Puka doesn't play, would you rather this to be Tua or Staffy? If Puka doesn't play.
I think I would still rather have Stafford. I think the biggest risk there, it would be worth a lot more to Kupp if Puka doesn't play. I think the biggest risk would just be that overall offensive efficiency comes down, but I still don't think it would knock more than half a point off the total. So it's not, it's not necessarily a huge loss to the game environment, a game environment that we do expect to be very good here. Rounding out the team, it's Matthew Stafford, Alvin Kamara, Ken Walker, Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Evan Ingram. I think that's a pretty solid team. I'm not in love with Stafford stacks this week, but certainly could do worse here. I'm going to see if maybe we can get into a dog bowl or another 12-man draft if you want to grab a question or two in the chat, Ryan. Still got 4 left for a dog bowl, so.
Yeah, let's do it. So Squid the Goat, who should I start, Aaron Jones or James Cook? I'm kind of two minds on this for James Cook. He has been incredible in games that the Bills have won big since Joe Brady took over. I believe it's like 23 DraftKings fantasy points in games that the Bills win by 7 or more points. So I'm a little bit tempted there. But Aaron Jones, man, has just it's the absolute nuts on paper matchup against the Colts. The workload has been so good. He's been so efficient. Yeah, I feel like a big dumb idiot for doubting Aaron Jones at all this year. Scott Barrett should be calling me out for that one a lot. That was a big offseason argument we had. But yeah, I think I'd clearly lean Jones.
I don't think really anyone saw the usage of Ty Chandler going under 25%. And last week he was on the field for 4% of snaps. And then you had CJ Ham out there for 16%. So this is Aaron Jones's backfield, which is interesting because he's someone that typically can't stay healthy if you overuse him. It doesn't look like Minnesota is very worried about that.
Yeah, I don't think they want to put this big of a role on Aaron Jones, but I mean, he's just all they have. I think he's pretty clearly the only guy that they have confidence in back there. He led all running backs in snap share last week. I think he played like 48 out of 52 snaps. It's just absolutely absurd usage for Aaron Jones as of late. I don't expect that to, sustain for the rest of the season, but it's still going to be really strong. And he's at a 15% target share. He falls into the category of backs who can get you there in negative game script, positive game script. Not that the Vikings have really had much negative script, but still certainly interesting.
Is this the week that you see Cam Akers start to get mixed in to the role that they hope Ty Chandler would play in that, like, even if it's 20%, 25%?
Yeah, I really would not be surprised to see Cam Akers start to play more because, it's really clear that the team does not have a lot of faith in Chandler. Do you have any thoughts there, Ryan?
I mean, yeah, it's possible. I'm not going to let Cam Akers talk me off of Aaron Jones.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know.
Sure.
Like, it's just kind of,
absolutely.
But yeah, no, for sure. I think in hindsight, that's what that signing was about and was probably their intention. Cam Akers is maybe the dustiest running back in the league. I'm having trouble coming up.
Hey, he's had like 4 Achilles tendons. Okay.
I mean, good for him that he's even still in the league. I guess no offense to him, but Yeah, damn.
That's a point. That's a point for Aaron Jones right there.
Yeah, it is. Somebody asked Herbert or Jameis Winston. I think I pretty clearly lean Jameis, but it's close enough that I think you could justify either play. But Jameis would be my preference just because of overall pace. Cleveland's running a ton of plays. They're also throwing the ball a ton. Jameis is, notoriously aggressive here, even though the matchup isn't great. Do you guys have a take on that?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I'm pretty clearly Winston. Like the whole thesis for like Herbert or McConkey is, hey, they're playing Jameis Winston. They might be forced into a shootout and have to throw. But yeah, I mean, just start at step one there. It seems more likely that that's going to be the pass volume for Winston being there.
Who did you? I need to know who did you draft?
So we started this team out with a CeeDee Lamb build.
No, not you. The person that's picking between Herbert and Winston.
Oh, yeah, that had to be a I'm trying to
CJ
think.
Stroud team.
Yeah, probably
Anthony Richardson team. It was an Anthony Richardson team. That's what.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, NAR team. You would be very desperate.
Winston's not the worst pick for sure.
So we started
Chubb
out
also
here,
hasn't been efficient. So.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think they'll lean into the ground game until Chubb starts looking a little bit better. But we started out, we're in a Wildcat draft right now. Couldn't find anything larger that was about to fill. Started out with CeeDee Lamb. I think I want to go running back here. I'm kind of tempted by like a later round Mooney pick. I'm not as in love with London. How do you guys feel about like doubling up on running back or maybe grabbing like an Achane and Bowers here?
I think I prefer Achane Bowers.
Okay.
Because there's a lot more. The running backs later are just a lot stronger in my opinion. Like, I'm with you. I don't feel like we need to double up on it.
I mean, pretty much every week you can find a couple scroll down running backs who are pretty compelling. It's rare to find, scroll down tight ends who are solid options. Pat, would you agree with that?
Yeah, hell yeah.
All right.
So
awesome.
So the plan is to go Mooney as the bring back. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, that's what I think.
Let's
Can grab Dak later on. I think that makes for a pretty compelling stack. And again, I'm not in love with this game. I think there are maybe a bit more interesting ways you can kind of play this slate. But this game does have the highest total on the slate by a pretty decent margin. So it's a game you should have exposure to, especially if you're drafting more than just a couple teams.
Let's say you guys are drafting 10 Dak teams with Lamb. How many would you want to have Ferguson for the double?
Maybe half. I guess it would also depend on contest size. Like in the fullback dive, I'd want probably more than half to be doubles. In like the Wildcat or the main BR, maybe closer to 20% would be doubles, something like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. Dak's outside the top 6 in ADP this week, right?
So, so he'll be our last pick here. Mooney will probably be our second to last pick. So we really only have one more roster spot to fill out. Will likely be a running back and grab like a Chase Brown, maybe a Swift, a Connor.
This is what people have a hard time, and drafters have a hard time doing, is drafting a game script, right? And saying, wow, how can I ignore Malik Neighbors, or how can I ignore Drake London to go ahead and draft the wide receiver too? But you see it week in and week out. The players that are least likely to hit last week, Cedric Tillman and Ladd McConkey, 2 scrolls that were nutted on the slate, hit. And guess what? They're not in the main slate, but they were in dog bowl teams because it's double the size as 12 drafters. So still in the main slate, you don't have to hit the nuts, but someone like Mooney, where he's constantly in the game plan, he's out there for 80% plus of snaps in a team that needs to throw the ball, and hopefully in this game script needs to throw the ball against Dallas. But they've looked pretty bad, but 52-point total. This seems like a pretty good spot for Mooney.
Yeah, who do we want at running back here? I'm always tempted by Chase Brown, especially when this late value opens up. Generally when I look at my exposure, like Sunday, those are the guys I have the most exposure to, the late values that we know weren't drafted super early. What do you think, Pat?
I mean, do you really have 50% Chase Brown?
I've only drafted about 15 teams. So I have taken about 50% Chase Brown, and looks like we're going to take a little bit more Chase Brown. Yeah, no, I mean, I think like generally the strategy is just like he's going to be way lesser owned than the running backs who project similarly. So
This might just be the spot where you build your team, right? And this is probably Dak here because lower chance that someone goes Mooney.
Yeah, and I think
I like
Pat
this
was kind of
like
harping on a point that I know me and Ryan have talked about at length. Is best player available is fine, but we are still trying to stack our teams and go for the best possible score. I believe it was the week Joe Burrow, T Higgins, Jamar Chase was like the clear optimal. Where we caught a lot of flack in chat for passing on Marvin Harrison Jr. and Brock Bowers for to make sure that we secured a Joe Burrow, T Higgins, Jamar Chase team. That team ended up doing really, really well, and I did the math afterwards. We gave up nothing in terms of raw projection. People are just so ADP focused that it's easy to say, oh, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a 17 ADP, T Higgins is 33. I have to take MHJ every time when, the market doesn't always know best. I prefer to rely on projections generally.
The year I won the main slate, I had a Russell Wilson, Jerry Jeudy stack on a year that they were absolute failures. And a Keenan Allen bring back. Keenan Allen, you're thinking high floor. He ends up as wide receiver 1, but we stack that game stack. We get that very correct. You pair it with Kittle having a pretty good game. Chase was my first round pick. He scored the least amount of points on the team. And then Nick Chubb. Shout out to Al Smiz, the 5 under 5, his DFS content that he used to do. Nick Chubb always under 5% owned, and that did lean into why I picked Chubb late. He was like a little scroll outside the top 36, but yeah, you're right. If you stack these game scripts and you get that game script very correct, and maybe even like a player like Mooney, people are going to be stacking this game script pretty heavily. But what percent are going to have Mooney? It's going to be very low.
Yeah, the default stack for this game is pretty clearly going to be like a Dak, CD, Drake London. And, that'll probably make up, I don't know, 40, 50% of the game stacks here. Obviously, like a Cousins, London, CD would probably be roughly equally as popular by just mixing in a Mooney. Mixing in a Pitts. Yeah, even a Bijan, you could really add a lot. And you can, I would never run it back with like 2 pass catchers, but you could certainly do like a Dak, Bijan, Mooney, CD team as well and just get a ton of exposure to this game. But yeah, assuming we don't get, we shouldn't get sniped on Mooney here. I really, really like this team. It's a Dak, Devon Achane, Chase Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Brock Bowers, and hopefully Darnell Mooney team. Also got a nice little mini correlation with Chase Brown and Bowers. Ideally Bengals take the lead there, powered by Chase Brown. Raiders have to throw a ton, and that, obviously naturally flows through Brock Bowers and, also Jacoby Myers. But for this lineup, it'll be Brock Bowers.
What you did with this team, and especially in relation to your own portfolio, is something that I love to do in the fullback dive. Those smaller entry contests are grabbing those players that you're very high on, right? That $25 5 entry max fullback dive, smaller field. You want to get your hashtag my guys that week in those contests. So you just pair Chase Brown, which you have 50% on, you're high on, Bowers 50% you're high on. So guys you're very confident in. And then you paired it with a stack that is not very high owned. I love that.
Yeah, really, really appreciate it. I think we're locked into a 10K win now in the Wildcat. So hopefully I can find something else, Ryan, if you want to grab another chat question while I click around here for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So should I trade Metcalf for Connor? I'm assuming that's James Conner and Mooney. I feel like I need a running back. I mean, I always say this on every trade question is like it. I'll trust you when you say you feel like you need a running back. I think that's fine. I don't have like a huge. Metcalf's volume has been incredible. I think he's the wide receiver 6 or wide receiver 7 by expected fantasy points per game right now. So he's certainly a positive regression candidate. He's getting all that downfield usage that we love. But yeah, I mean, depending on league size, I think that's okay if you have a big need at the running back position. I don't know. Do you guys have strong takes on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you. I think it's okay if you need a running back. What do you think, Pep?
Honestly, I was just looking at the contest. The Deposit Kingdom, what's that one at? And then what was the question? I'd love to chime in. Was it on YouTube?
Yeah, sorry. The question was, should I trade DK Metcalf for James Conner and Darnell Mooney? The guy feels like he needs a running back.
at this time of the year, I hate trading down one elite player for
Yeah.
two okay players. So like you're trying to get through like the bye weeks right now. As long as you can do that, if you're projected to at least make the playoffs, try to stick in there with your players, even though they're hurt. I'm always looking at this time for like, okay, I'm looking at playoff schedules. Even on my elite players, if they don't have the best playoff schedule, I'm looking to upgrade playoff schedules this time of year. But I guess it depends on your record right now, Jay Smells.
Yeah. Oh, actually, Jay Smells posted the whole team in chat. I completely missed that. So I mean, he has Devon Achane, Tony Pollard, and Tyrone Tracy. I don't know that you actually do need a running back. And
Yeah,
and Breece Hall. Yeah, you don't need a running back.
I'd hang on.
Ignore everything.
Unless
we just said.
unless
Keep
you have
Metcalf,
like
please.
3 flex spots. I think I'd
don't trade down. Don't trade down. I'd be looking to target the Lamar Jackson team and see if they're interested in Deontay Johnson for that stack and see if you can get some little equity there.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good call. We need one more person for our first ever Dog Bowl draft.
I'll jump in. We'll split.
All right. I'm ready to go to Dallas as long as Pat does not snipe.
I can't give up the picks now. I can't give up the picks.
Someone asked Dowdle or Chubb. I think I'd lean toward Chubb this week. I mean, it's not a great matchup. They've been doing weird stuff with running backs. Graham Barfield pointed out that Dowdle was sick last week. He was on the sidelines chatting it up with teammates. If you're sick, that's not what you do. So very confusing. I do think they come back to Dowdle this week, but it just feels like there's a lot more risk with his workload than there would be with a guy like Nick Chubb. Ryan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'd just rather play Chubb. The volume's been incredible. He's been up at 75% of backfield XFP. As we've talked about, the efficiency just hasn't been there. I'm not super convinced Nick Chubb's ever going to get there this year, but I have kind of me and Graham, I think, have been talking about him as like a kind of a low key redraft buy right now.
Yeah.
If there's a 20% chance he becomes even 90% of Nick Chubb by the playoffs, then that's great. That's great for you. We'll do one other question here, I guess. Trying to decide which one to carry on my bench, rank these running back stashes, Jalen Wright, Blake Corum, or Trey Benson. I think I clearly prefer Corum. Jalen Wright has looked fine, like in limited action, but that, as we saw, that's going to take multiple injuries to ever get Jalen Wright close to a bell cow workload.
He'd need 3 injuries to be an actual I think.
Definitely.
Yep. And I mean, Benson losing snaps to Amari DiMercato on passing downs whenever Connor has been banged up this year. So, clearly Corum for me.
Ooh, playing the board here with AJ. I like it.
Yeah. All right. So Pat took Jamar Chase 102. I ended up going AJ Brown 105. I think in 6-person drafts, I would be a bit more tempted by the running back picks, but because wide receiver does thin out pretty quick, I'd much rather just grab, a clear top 3 option here. Maybe we'll get lucky and Hurts will come back to us, but even if he doesn't, I still feel, confident in our ability to build a later round stack here. And there are some options that we like. It might end up being a Jameis Winston team if Pat doesn't beat us to it.
No, Jameis Winston's all you, bro. I don't think I'm afraid the team does roll out a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. So I'm not super confident that it's gonna be Cedric Tillman every single week. These other 2 receivers still pulling a lot of targets on their own too. So, but Cedric Tillman still a good option this week. I will say he gets drafted in Dog Bowl almost every time.
Yeah, I think that is kind of a good argument against Jameis in some of these 12-man drafts, and why I'm probably a bit more excited to play him in DFS because the rosters are deeper. It's a lot easier to like double or triple up on Jameis in DFS than it is in like a Dog Bowl. And I mean, nothing would be worse. Like if you grabbed a Cedric Tillman, Elijah Moore double, and Njoku and Judy get all the targets, like you're just cooked, right? So yeah, that is tricky. But I think at QB14, there's obviously still some value. It's just sort of piecing together what the stack is. Ryan, someone asked Tracy over Pollard in PPR. That's a pretty close one to me.
Maybe I'm just like irrationally high on Tyrone Tracy. I don't know if it is actually that close to me. Yeah,
Okay,
I think I'd go Tracy, but I don't know. Our projections might say differently. I might be balling our projections on that one, but
I have
give me Tracy.
I have half PPR pulled up. I can see what we have, but yeah, it's just tough when Pollard played basically every snap in the games that Spears missed. They just have no faith in Julius Chestnut. He's a guy who has like 15 career touches in 3 seasons, so that's the argument for Pollard. The game environment's better for Tracy, though. It's not quite as valuable as a backfield, but it's not like we've been getting massive scores out of the Tennessee backfield. Feels closer to a coin flip to me, but I'll lean on my boy Ryan Heath and say Tyrone Tracy there. All right, I'm 6 picks away here. Man, it would be pretty nice to get Hurts and just sure up my stack. This is such a good spot for Jalen Hurts against Jacksonville. Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's the single softest schedule adjusted matchup. Jacksonville's also playing a ton of man, which obviously they have no business doing. AJ Brown, 5.35 yards per route run against man coverage, which is a number that's difficult to fathom. I believe that's higher than both Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb last season when they were absolutely smoking man coverage. Ryan, do you have anything to add on the matchup here? Because it's just so damn good.
Not really. Yeah, that's it. I love it in that sense. I like in general with this game, I worry that the Eagles don't want to throw the ball. So I think like in 6-man BRs, I'm not actually that excited to stack a Hurts with a Brown because I think in a shallower format like that, the way that Hurts is the optimal is he runs for a couple touchdowns, and that's a little bit negatively correlated with what AJ Brown needs to do, especially if he's only going to throw the ball 20-ish times like he's averaged over the last 3 weeks. But yeah, I think definitely in a deeper format like this, it can make more sense to me. So yeah, I'm cool with grabbing this stack if we can get to it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. In our projections meeting this morning, I mentioned to Chris Weck, I think we have the Eagles pass rate at 49%, which is ridiculously low. I told him you could bump it down to 45 and I still think it'd be fine. When they're up by 7 or more, they're throwing the ball 35% of the time, which is just absurdly low. Spread here, I believe, is 7.5. Yeah, as you can see on the lovely best ball overlay tool. So yeah, I'm 1 pick away from Hurts. I'm kind of holding my breath here because I do really want this stack, but I wouldn't be torn. I guess I'd just go Bowers if oh my gosh. Wow. Luke Big Shots. Are you watching the stream right now? Are you trying to spite me?
Luke's in these streets a lot. EDN3 as well. Best Ball Viper. Shout out to him. He won a ticket the other week. Crutches tied for 3rd place last week. So him and the person that also tied for 3rd, because there's only 3 tickets, have a 1v1 this week. I don't know how it's like what the script of that is. They have a 1v1 for the ticket. They're splitting the 10K, but it's a 1v1 this week for the ticket to Dallas, which is insane.
Wow. So would that just be, that would be a 1-on-1 draft, right?
I believe so. So, which I would love to see that. I would think it would go receiver. But I'd be really interested to see.
Yeah, that would be a real interesting draft just to see the board on. I know DraftKings occasionally when people tie for live final tickets, they'll actually make them play in a different sport for the tickets. Like I've seen people.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It depends on the time.
Oh my God.
It depends on the time crunch of the ticket. Like if you tied for a live final ticket now, you would just play NFL next week. If you tie for a live final ticket like 2 weeks before the event, I think they're going to make you play like NBA or MLB for the ticket, which would obviously just be, for someone like me who only plays football, that would be a true tragedy because I don't know. I can name basketball players, but I don't know anything about fantasy basketball. So that would be tough. Pat, do you play other sports?
No, I'm a one-trick pony here with football. It takes up all my time, and I put all my effort into football year round.
You and me both, brother. Ryan,
I don't even know how people watch other sports, honestly. I can't get I can get invested in like the Celtics or the Red Sox like when they're good, like when they're in the playoffs or whatever. But yeah, I producer Thomas I know is like a crazy baseball fan in the background here, and I don't know how he does it. It's just so much to that. Yeah, I'm just never sitting down and watching another sport.
I'm a big fan of college basketball. and I do dabble in DFS, especially like any of the slates where the Cincinnati Bearcats play, because I have a good feel for that team. But I wouldn't consider myself a very, very serious college basketball gambler, more of just a for fun thing. And I think it's a really, really fun sport, as bad as the refs and the shooting can be sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, Pat, you just took James Cook here.
I could be away from the keyboard right now, basically. Jaden Daniels, Terry, I would have liked that, but that it will be chalky. And we went best available running back. I was flipping between James Cook and Chase Brown, but it does feel pretty decent to get a piece of this Buffalo offense, maybe leverage some of those touchdowns away from Josh Allen too.
Yeah, I was pretty tempted by Chase Brown. Doesn't look like we're going to get him here. Ryan, I'm kind of thinking that I want to wait on quarterback in the stack and just grab the best running back available right now, which would be James Conner. What do you think?
Yeah, I fully agree. That's exactly what I was just going to say.
All right, sweet. So we're on the same page there. I still think there are plenty of late round stacks we could go after. So far it's a James Conner, AJ Brown, Brock Bowers team. Pat has drafted Jaden Daniels, James Cook, Jamar Chase. So certainly some interesting teams so far on stream. It's always interesting getting into these 12-man drafts because it's such a different dynamic compared to 6-man drafts. Pat, I don't know about you, but I really wish there were more 12-man contests. It's a shame we haven't been able to, fill a lot of those. I know that's why Underdog has backed off a bit, but I find the 12-man format to be, I think the edges are a lot bigger, and honestly, I just find it more fun.
They are, and in a contest like this, when you're building these teams, you just want to put up a high median score, right? You want to identify that 6th round. Where is there like a plentiful of the position at that player? Where's there scarcity? And in this contest, what I've noticed, there's quite a bit of tight ends, quite a bit of QBs tougher to separate from the field, tight ends harder to nail on who's scoring the most points that week. So typically that's pretty good strategy from like without getting into it too deep for what's been successful so far. Mm-hmm. But there is definitely a bigger edge just in this contest. There's quite a bit of sharps. This room, there's some sharks in this room for sure.
Yeah. So a couple things I've noticed, obviously smaller dollar buy-ins, like if you're grinding 12-man drafts, the squib kick, the $3 squib kick is, much softer draft rooms compared to something like the dog bowl, which is, as Pat mentioned, a lot more sharps. Another thing that I've noticed, Pat, which I think is pretty interesting, and maybe you can back it up with your own experience, is later at night, I've noticed way less sharp players are drafting.
Oh my God.
It's a lot more casual. It's like there are guys that I'm really afraid of from just like the DFS streets, guys like Nerdy 10 or Sacrilegious. They're clearly on a normal schedule. They're never drafting at 2 a.m. like I am. So if you want to avoid some of those sharper drafters, I think drafting later at night is a good idea. Pat, you seem like you agree.
Dude, Monday and Tuesday this week specifically, I did 6 dog bowls. I usually get from like 8 to 12. I'm not maxing this contest. I don't have the bankroll for that. I have my other contests I want to do as well. But I'm investing $200 to $300 a week in this and trying to hit a dart. 6 to 7 badgeless drafters from 1 to 3 a.m.
Wow.
In each draft. Yeah. On Monday and Tuesday, at least for this week.
Wow. Yeah. So that does really play into sort of my own experience and what I've seen as well. So I do think if you have a flexible schedule, if you're a bit of a night owl, I think drafting later at night is certainly a good idea in these contests. I've also noticed it does seem like earlier in the week, we do have a slightly softer draft rooms. I've played a few of their I don't know what you would call them, the contests that they release immediately, like Sunday, right after the slate ends for the following week. Yes, the playbook.
On
That's
Sunday.
What I'm thinking.
It's a very, very sharp point you're bringing up right now.
Yeah, I really have not been seeing many badges in the playbook, which is I guess a little bit surprising, but also not really. I mean, I know sharp players, they want more information, and it generally makes sense for them to draft later in the week. So if you are trying to get into softer draft rooms, I think drafting like the playbook, drafting earlier in the week, drafting later at night does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I drafted one playbook team. And I was like, yeah, that's it. Like I'm done. It was like a Derrick Henry Lamb Neighbors team. I'm like, all right, this is not going to be indicative of like how the week's going to go with ADP, but it is nice to get into those rooms. And a good point right along with that is you can go into the rankings and you can see the slate on Sunday. You don't have to wait for the BR to open on Monday. There's Tracy.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about Tracy there. Ryan, what do you think about going Ramondre and then grabbing a stack with our last 2 picks? I think Ramondre is probably my favorite running back on the board right now.
Yeah, that's fine by me. Yeah,
Okay.
we talked. Ramondre is just back to being the bell cow in New England. We've completely pretended like the fumble stuff every game for the first month of the season didn't happen. Gerard Mayo just paid his tribute to the New England sports media, so they're not harassing him about it every week, and he's not playing Antonio Gibson over Ramondre Stevenson anymore. So we are back in business with Ramondre.
We are back with Ramondre. He's a little bit interesting in DFS as well. What were you going to say, Pat?
Would you guys prefer Drake May or Brissett for Ramondre?
Definitely May. It's just the improvement in overall offensive efficiency, I think, makes up for, May might steal a couple carries, if that. I mean, it's really we need New England to move the ball. And I guess the nice thing with this game is like game script shouldn't ever really get out of hand for Ramondre. So they should be able to sort of continuously give him carries unless Mason Rudolph really, really shows up here, which I would be pretty surprised to see.
Okay. Do you want to start talking about our stack and what we're going to do here, Jake?
I mean, I want Jameis Winston, man, but I could be convinced on
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
I mean, I'm a pretty predictable guy. I could also be convinced on, we didn't grab Cup, so I guess not Stafford, but maybe like a Caleb Williams, maybe a Bo Nix, maybe a Jordan Love. You could probably sell me on those 3 if you have a strong lean. I'd imagine you like Love the most out of that group.
I do like Love the most. Reed is gone. You could go Dobbs, but I'm never crazy about Romeo Dobbs.
We could go with your boy Christian Watson, Ryan.
We're not doing that.
Oh, come on! The route share was pretty nice last week, and I believe he tied for the team league in target share.
That doesn't mean it's going to be nice this week. I don't trust that at all, Jake.
But big play threat, a lot of end zone targets, Ryan. I've learned this from your writing.
I know. I've just been tired and exhausted by the Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks experience.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I want to
see Green Bay's tough to nail down. Like the week I'm on Reed, he hits. The week I'm off Wicks or on Wicks, like it's punishing.
Been brutal, man. All right, so Ryan, what do we want to do at quarterback here?
Has Ladd gone? I haven't seen him, but I might have missed it.
Ladd's alive, I believe.
Ladd is still on the board.
I might just want to do Ladd Herbert.
I like that. I mean, that's
strongly about Winston, but yeah.
I'm already probably going to have too much Jameis exposure in DFS anyway.
Okay.
So I really don't mind hedging a bit with some Herbert. So let's go Ladd here, and then we can grab. I mean, where is Herbert going? Is he like way down here?
Bro, he might be off the board.
Oh my gosh, he's below Carr. Yeah, he's QB 20. He's below Daniel Jones and T-Law.
Naked Bo Nix might be the play.
Oh, I mean that. Yeah, I'm not going naked Bo Nix. I mean, if someone snipes me on Herbert, I guess we have to. But yeah, I really
last
like.
Week, man, you can't talk trash on naked Bo Nix.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, that's when I think it was Thomas who told me that naked Bo Nix won the million. I was just like, oh my god, that was actually insane.
The first time I talked to Thomas this week, he was gloating that he was right and all the cashing points guys were wrong about naked Bo Nix.
Thomas needs to start playing the millie then.
Apparently,
Josh at bestballoverlay.com, my partner, came in 13th in last week's dog bowl, down like 4.5 points with a naked Bo Nix team, and that Sutton fumble at the 1. The game script from the third quarter, they were just so far ahead that they weren't throwing the ball, but we needed like 6.5 points from that point.
Oh, that's always
shout
tough.
Out to Josh.
Pat, I'm curious, and I pretty clearly know where I fall on this, but are you ever okay drafting, like even in a 12-man draft, drafting a non-rushing quarterback unstacked, or do you always want those guys stacked?
Depends on the offense, right? If it's not a super condensed offense, like if you had J-Mo playing this week, I think Goff is that player where you can spread the ball to Khalif, to J-Mo, to Amon-Ra, to Laporta, dump off to Gibbs, where a player like that could easily get there. But we've seen weeks on weekly winners where these pocket passing QBs, they get there without a stack, and it's
Huh.
It's extremely thin, especially in
Yeah.
contests where there's 180,000 lineups, but you see it happen. It's like, oh my God, like how? Like how?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Like everything
it's
you
something
know is thrown out the window.
exactly. It's something I've seen in DFS as well in some of these larger field tournaments, like an unstacked Justin Herbert, for instance, winning winning like the $9 slant for 25K or 15K.
Yeah.
It's just not something I'm gonna ever play. So if you beat me with that, I mean, props to you.
Yeah,
but
that's it.
I'm never going that route. I'm always gonna try to force a stack in there. But a naked Bo Nix, if we did hypothetically get sniped on Justin Herbert, I think would be fine. I mean, he's averaging 6.5 rushing fantasy points per game, which is only, I believe, 1.5 below Lamar Jackson. So the floor is pretty strong.
It's viable.
I have some doubts about his ability. I mean, he's addicted to off-platform throws. He loves playing street ball, and it's been that way since he was a freshman at Auburn. But I mean, with the rushing floor, and Baltimore's a great matchup, I think you could pretty easily justify Bo Nix as a late round, if you get sniped sort of play in these 12-person drafts here. Right now, we are rocking with a James Conner, Ramondre Stevenson, AJ Brown, Lad McConkey, Brock Bowers team, hoping to land on
I like it.
Justin Herbert here. Pat, you have a Jane Daniels, James Cook. Oh, flip back to my team. Jane Daniels, James Cook, Tony Pollard, Jamar Chase, Taysom Hill team. Love the Taysom pick. Love
zero correlation here. We just went. Now I do have a team with Burrow falling back to me with Chase, and again, I like Burrow a little more if you have Higgins playing. But the naked Jaden Daniels is the way we're going with Taysom.
Yeah, and this is a pretty good week to draft naked Jaden Daniels. I think Ryan talked about this at the top of the show. Giants have the 4th highest pressure rate. Jaden Daniels' scramble rate, quadruples? More than that. It goes from like 5% to 35% when he's under pressure. This is a pretty good spot to play a naked Jaden Daniels, I think. And even the Terry McLaurin stack isn't great. I mean, Terry McLaurin's never earning more than 6, 7, 8 targets in an individual game. So I really don't think you have to force McLaurin into Daniels teams. And that's something that I have seen at ADP pretty frequently, is McLaurin being drafted far higher than he should be, just because people want to force in that McLaurin Daniels stack, which I don't always think is optimal here. Yeah. We managed to get Justin
highly
Herbert.
Owned.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect,
And
perfect.
I mean, that's really the only stack people want to play with Jane Daniels, for good reason. I mean, there's really no one else earning routes. I mean, I guess you could argue for like a Zach Ertz, who had pretty solid usage last week. I keep hoping they'll give an 80% route share to Noah Brown, but it's just not quite there yet.
Yeah, I know. I'm there with you. And this is probably why I have so much BTJ, is because this spot just seems so nutted for him, where you could just pick swap off him to anyone you want. But I'm going to deviate. I love, and this is where I was planning on going before you even said it, Christian Watson.
Ooh,
come on down.
Wow.
Okay.
This is quite the team from Pat. Jaden Daniels, James Cook, Pollard, Chase, Christian Watson, and Taysom Hill.
Just because you have the news of Love expected to play this week too, I do think I was not touching him before, but he's going to be under 5% as well, where BTJ will be probably closer to 40%, 50%.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a fair call. We can answer a couple questions and then get out of here. Someone asked Lad, Waddle, or Rome Odunze flex one. To me, it's pretty clearly Lad. Ryan, I'd imagine you'd agree here.
Yeah, easily Lad.
Pat, any objections?
It's definitely Lad for me, but probably touchdown dependent. I mean, same thing with Waddle, though. You're looking for that explosive play.
Yeah, and then someone else, if Josiah DeGuara has any upside this week, no, would be my answer. I don't really have anything else to add. I mean, he's on the Jags. If you think they run a lot of 13 personnel, which would be 3 tight ends, because he's behind Brenton Strange. So
Brenton Strange is good, man. I'm into the Brenton Strange stuff.
I'm with you too. I mean, and DeGuara is more of like an H-back kind of tight end than he is a traditional tight end. He's UC Bearcat, a guy that I like quite a bit, was way overdrafted by the Packers in the 3rd round. I mean, he's just never going to be anything outside of like an end of roster guy. But all right, guys, really
Jake,
appreciate
sorry to cut you
No,
off.
no,
I
you
originally
go for
thought
it.
that was like a troll comment to you about UFL because I confused Josiah DeGuara with Jay Sternberger. That was
Oh
just
my
where
gosh.
my brain was.
When I read that, I double checked to make sure it wasn't one of my college buddies, because sometimes they'll leave comments like that. But yeah, no upside in Josiah DeGuara, despite the fact. I mean, I love my Bearcats. I'm always here to promote, Jerome Ford, Travis Kelce, even Tyler Scott. But yeah, no upside in Josiah DeGuara this week. But guys, thank you so much for all the comments, the questions, tuning in to the Week 9 edition of the Underdog Drafter Party. We really appreciate Pat for joining us. Definitely go check out his channel at Fantasy Dog Pound. Pat, what do you have coming up? What kind of content are you doing this year?
Yeah, of course. And they didn't even drop it. Drop a like on the stream. They didn't
Yes,
beg
sir.
you for it at all. End of the stream. It's always appreciated. Drop a comment if you got time. But I do my Monday drafts for Battle Royale on Underdog. It's Smash the Slate, as well as we're always working on the overlay, making that bigger and better. We just signed to Easy, so his draft tools are going to be over on our website, as well as integrated into a new premium tool on the overlay. So very excited and appreciate you guys always like joining the team, and you guys are so sharp, and this room is this just positive energy and super sharp, and you guys are two of the best in the business.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Really appreciate you lending us your time this week. Our first ever guest on the Underdog Drafter Party, and it couldn't have gone better. I even drafted a dog bowl team despite my complaints about the rake.
Yeah.
Had to do it for my boy, Pat. But guys, thank you again so much for tuning in, for leaving comments on the Week 9 edition of the Underdog Drafter Party. For Ryan, for Pat, for Thomas, we will see you guys at the top of the leaderboards.
What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.